If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, blah, blah. The blah, blah, blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
And the blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
But there's a kind of a plantation mentality among the people who have born and raised there, where they think that somehow the outlaws are getting over on them, on the system, and they don't want to be part of that sort of thing.
Okay, guys, welcome back to Grimerica Show. We have got Buzz Coastin coming at you this week, talking about living in the jungle and all sorts of fun stuff. I mean, I get into some jungle living. I don't think
It was
like
Hawaii. It was Hawaii. It's got to be. It's not like, a cold jungle.
it might drive me crazy after a while. And that's, of course, everybody's favorite podcaster, Graham, loving the new winter Dunlop. I guess the beaver saw his shadow, or the groundhog.
Beaver. The groundhog, yeah.
The beaver never sees a shadow.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I heard some geese coming by.
Did you? You can't trust the geese anymore. Did you see the video of all those birds flying into the ground?
No. Into the ground?
Mm-hmm. Look, if it looks like, I mean, it's hard to know what to trust these days. And I mean, it just could all be totally fucking fake unless I filmed it myself. We're almost at that point.
Like that post you did on Instagram. I was going to call you on that. I was like, has that been fact checked? I don't know.
Which one? The Irish one?
Yeah, no, that one too. Yeah, that one. I know that.
That is satire.
Is it?
To me, it is.
Right. So you don't care if it's
I
real
don't
or not.
care. No. I'm not a journalist on my Instagram account. My personal Instagram account is shit posting.
Right. Yeah,
Mostly.
no, that one I could understand, but I think it was the latest. Oh,
Which
the
one?
latest one was about the CDC changing and updating the toxicological profile on vinyl chloride recently.
Oh, yeah. Is that not true?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Because that's the whole thing, that whole train thing. I don't know what to believe. I was
It
going to
looks like it's true.
No, not that I don't know what to believe, but I just,
I don't know what to believe.
It's the extreme synchromistic parts of it that I don't know what to believe. It's easy to come up with a meme to say, that this and that
whack.
happened right beforehand and all that. But yeah, there's some crazy stuff about how the train was behaving and what was going on before that and what it plowed into and how they lit the stuff on fire. And
I don't know about any of that.
yeah,
How was the train behaving? Was it being naughty?
melted wheels or something. It was speeding along, like heat warnings. Like I've recently just read a bunch of other stuff on it. It's like, I just can't grab onto anything until I got to wait with everything now, even the UFOs and all that stuff. Just wait it out.
I don't think the
Don't
UFOs are
attach to
UFOs, are they?
Well, no, but that's the point.
Didn't it turn
They're
out they're
calling
just
them,
balloons?
they're calling them, but they're pretty careful on what they call them, which is alarming.
Is the rumor... So the rumor I heard is, tell me if this is true, is that because of the Chinese spy balloon, they rejiggered the air defense systems for slow moving objects, and now they're picking up all sorts of balloons.
I know, but that just doesn't make sense to me that they're going to all of a sudden, there's slow moving objects now. All of a sudden, we're just going to go and shoot them down right away. Like, come on.
The one guy did slip up and say he shot down a balloon before that, right? When they were still
Canadian
trying to
guy.
say it was unidentified, the Canadian guy was like, it was a balloon.
Just didn't want to participate in the narrative. But that's what I'm getting at. Like,
So they scrambled our boys. I mean, Justin was pretty worried.
All of a sudden you find new things because you're looking differently, and now it's just automatic shoot down. Like they've been fucking traveling around in our atmosphere, thousands of them for decades. Come on.
You could tell the teacher that the U.S. military shot down your science project. It's pretty funny, really. I mean,
it's
hopefully it is just balloons, because I feel like we're dangerously unprepared for serious problems in the West.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know what happened with one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, you actually, let's talk about this first. You sent out a great newsletter. It's got some stuff.
Newsletter.
I think it's good. People should sign up to our newsletter. It's a good way for us to keep in touch, because our YouTube channel is on limbo again, and we're putting stuff out on Rumble and Rockfin and stuff too. But it's hard to reach out to people with Darren's lost his Twitter. All we have is some little social media stuff, and we barely using the social media to begin with. But sign up to the newsletter. And Darren, you mentioned the Bill C-11. Did you in there?
I don't know much about it,
Okay.
but I know that a bunch of people are telling me not to worry about it. It seems like it's honestly going to affect consumption more than anything.
Okay.
And I mean, Canada's just not a big market for us. So,
because in the meantime, the Justice Center released their newsletter that how disappointed they are with the commissioner's conclusion that the invocation of the Emergencies Act was justified. I mean, is
that what they decided?
Yeah. After all that hullabaloo, and all the, I mean, you can hear some guys like maybe the JCCF or Viva Frei break it down, but it's pretty gross. I mean, that's when you say that we're in trouble in the West, like, this is alarming to me. They're like, oh yeah, this can set the trend. And this is what they're admitting. Like, this will set the trend for how the government acts going forward. Like, what the fuck? And that's not alarming to people?
It's troublesome.
So the JCCF said, in finding that there was reasonable grounds for cabinet to believe that a national emergency existed when the act was invoked, the commissioner's report states, I do not come to this conclusion easily, as I do not consider the factual basis for it to be overwhelming, and I acknowledge that there is significant strength to the arguments against reaching it. So, the JCCF has a statement that says, like, in our view, the threshold set out in the Emergencies Act was clearly not met. Leaving aside the question of whether CSIS Act threat to security of Canada existed, it was clear from the evidence before the commission that the protests could have and would have been dealt with under existing law. The Justice Center argued that circumstances leading up to the invocation of the Emergencies Act did not meet the threshold set out in the statute for a declaration of emergency. It requires that threats to the security of Canada, as that term is defined in the CSIS Act, so serious as to be a national emergency, which cannot be effectively dealt with under any other law in Canada. I mean, I didn't follow that whole thing, that much, because it was pretty gross to me. And even I just sort of listened to sort of a quick update, but it's just typical. I mean, I guess we kind of knew that this was sort of a kangaroo court type thing, and it wasn't even official, but they can just go up there and lie, and they're not accountable to anything. And then all the truth that they hear doesn't matter, doesn't make a difference. So it's pretty disheartening.
I didn't know we were on 2 strikes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Have they both been appealed? Because I want to do an email appeal if we get denied both of those. Yeah, we just got a new one, right? That's the thing. And there was nothing. I listened to it. There was nothing. There was no medical misinfo in it at all. It's super frustrating.
Well, and our last strike was for two guidelines breakings. So technically we have 3 strikes. Huh.
What are you saying? The last one? What do you mean the last one? The one about the Cayenne clip?
No, that was a strike on February 13th. If I look at the strike on January 10th, they've noted 2 infractions. 2 different videos, the Svetlana one and the Joe Roop one. God damn it, Joe Roop.
Yeah. Yeah, we knew that at the time, yeah.
Yeah, so it could be. So we got to make it till April 10th.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. There's like almost no chance that's going to happen.
No, because the thing is that like I'm still on YouTube a little bit, and I hear people saying way worse stuff than us. I don't know how we're getting the short end of the stick. Like, it's so frustrating. They're allowed to just push back on all these different levels, it seems to me, and we just get that we're in this perpetual strike mode. So obviously they're on us.
I feel like it would take a real miracle for us to get all the way to April 10th without striking out.
Yep.
I guess it's almost March, but shit, man. I don't know. Wish us luck. I don't know what else to say. That's all we can do, really. Because this episode's not even going to go up, is it?
No, this can't. It's not going to YouTube. So, but I mean, the problem is, don't act like I do try and. I was in the midst of trying to backfill some of the episodes that had been missed because of these gaps when we're on strike. So don't sort of act crazy now, because you don't think it's going to go on there, because I'll forget about it and then I'll put it on and then we'll be strike out for sure.
The trans one was probably a bad idea. The trannies get maddie.
I know, but everybody else can talk about it.
Can they?
Well, yeah. All these popular YouTubers are talking about it all the time. It's super frustrating. Russell Brand can push back on all this huge stuff. He's got 5 million subs, 6 million subs. And if we said the same thing, would it be okay?
No, we don't have enough people to push back. They don't want to upset 5 million people. They don't give a shit about our 12K.
I guess. I mean, is that what it is? Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I mean, we shouldn't even be putting our eggs in that basket. But we thought, well, we'll utilize it while we're there. But
speaking of YouTube.
Adultbrain.ca. That's ADULTBRAIN.ca.
You've been hard at work on YouTube again.
Yeah, well, we talked about me making an Adult Brain channel for the books, right? So we can only use excerpts from our books that are exclusively on Audible and Apple Books, but we can still at least maybe advertise them a little bit there and get people to listen to the excerpts. And I'll talk a little bit about the books on these little videos, but we can also put some full ones on there that aren't exclusive. Like there's one on there right now called The World Brain, which is from H.G. Wells. And this is about his idea of like a living encyclopedia, basically like a world encyclopedia for the people. I just wonder like what he would have thought about Wiki and how easily manipulatable reality is through our current Wikipedia. Because he doesn't really mention like the risk of, it's almost like he was coming from a naive place. He's like, oh, people wouldn't put non-factual stuff in there on purpose. It's just scientism, which is a problem, but not manipulation.
Turns out people will make fake words come out of people's mouths and just anything they can to try and get over on people.
And changing definitions. And what would he think of like how the definition of fascism changed like 3 times in the last decade? 2 decades.
Or like people on the internet who are cutting up original video and misrepresentation. It's like,
but that's not
love that shit.
Who's doing that? Like trolling, you mean? Like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, is it trolling, I guess, when it's like, I think it's not trolling. It's more like just some weird thing for likes or to see how much traction something.
Clicking. Yeah, that's different. I'm talking more of like systematic, institutional, like manipulation, like the free speech clamping down, the censorship right now, the changing of definitions, the guerrilla skeptics in Wikipedia, like that. Like I don't think him and George Bernard Shaw, like they were for free. They might have been lying about it, but they really seemed to be for debate and for open dialogue and for questioning and for freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Like, what would they think nowadays to all that? To how bad it's gotten. It's
Shaw dead too.
Shaw dead, yeah. Shaw dead, yeah.
Maybe
late 1940s or something, maybe. I don't know, 48 maybe or something like that. 50.
Maybe we could
and
get
Shaw's
a
book. So that's the other book that's out, right? The Everybody's Political What's What from George Bernard Shaw is in Audible.
What?
It's also at Adult Brain, but what?
What?
Is it?
Everybody's
It's
political. What's what?
Yeah. And that's a deep book, man. I don't even really I can't even really talk about it. It's so confusing because he's a socialist and a communist, but he would agree with us on more than not, probably. I mean, he was anti-jab. He was anti scientism. Like, he was calling out the medical community on all kinds of bullshit, including the jab. I mean, and this is going back to the 1940s. And he lived from 60 to 40, 1860 to 1940s or something, 1950s. I think he was at least in his late 80s.
Was he that old?
Yeah, he wrote that book when he was 88 in 1944. Was it 88? I think it was 88. Yeah. So it's just nuanced, right? I mean, the conspiracy community is railing against these guys like H.G. Wells and Shaw, but Shaw is a more nuanced thing. Like, yeah, he went to
Commie?
No, he went to the Fabian. Like, he was a part of the Fabian Society with Wells and some of those guys. He mentions Wells in his book constantly and how they disagree on some things. But he had a pretty nuanced view of things. But he also wanted everybody to fit into civilization a certain way. And if you didn't fit, then bang. Like, if you don't want to learn to fit in society, like, you're dead, basically. So there's also some very harsh judgments from him too, because who gets to decide, like, what constitutes good society? Now, when we look back, and they're still in this mindset of like being civilized compared to savages, that kind of thing, even in the mid 1900s, I think. And now we're looking back going, geez, this civilized stuff is bullshit.
I'll play a little jingle, there's a little sample from your latest release, Dunlop.
Oh, which one? This book can never be finished any more than the annual register can. But each of its successive writers must stop somewhere, not always because they have no more to say, and certainly not because there is no more to be said, but because they are tired of saying it, and their readers of reading it, not to mention the limits of available time and space. I must stop, leaving much unsaid.
That's from your latest masterpiece, Everybody's Political What's What, by George Bernard Shaw.
And that's on Audible. And the H.G. Wells one is on our YouTube channel for free. So check out the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. And we're going to try and build this up. This one way that we can kind of maintain our existence here in the Great White North. Just check out Adult Brain. There's a link I'll put the link in all the show notes for the YouTube channel now. Yeah. And that book from Shaw is it's like 16 hours, I think, or 19 hours. It's pretty deep.
How long's the one you're doing now?
Oh, I don't know. It's like way longer than that. Probably 30 hours, maybe.
Another 30-hour tome.
Yeah.
I like it.
And the one I'm doing now is that one that Jason Bershears talked about, the vanished prehistoric world and the vanished races. It's actually so far not very controversial. Pretty much seems like a scientific summary of the prehistoric world. So it should be interesting. We'll see. There was a 100-page chapter on the mound builders, which was pretty interesting.
What book are we going to do for free next on the Adult Brain YouTube channel?
Well, the Symbolism of the Tarot by Ouspensky is waiting. It'll come out in a couple days. So every 2 days, a video will come out on that YouTube channel for now, for a couple months.
Sort. Great. Well, we had a great time in Mount Shasta, like we said last week. And now we're heading to Utah. Utah's really only, 7 weeks out? April 20th. We're heading there. We got Dave Matheson. We got Brandon Powell. We're going to go have a time down there. Start pumping that. So if you guys want to come hang out, that is like the cheapest event to get into still. If that's something you want to do and you want to come check out those stars, have that Bryce night.
Go for some hikes. Go for some hikes too, right?
The hikes at Zion are fucking second to none. They really are fantastic. There's a promo on YouTube.
What did I interrupt you saying? You're saying what about the?
Oh, we're gonna have we're gonna move the dinner this year up to Yovimpa Point. in that parking lot instead, where we watch the
Is it
sunset.
gonna be cold? Is it gonna be hotter
It's
than
always
last time?
cold. I don't know if it'll be hotter. I mean, last time it was a week later in the season. Definitely want to dress warm, but what we will have this time is over in the parking lot. We'll have
Dinner?
dinner there, and then we'll maybe keep a little fire going over there so people can go warm up, and we'll have Kevin's
that's a
little
good idea.
party van over there, maybe giving out some drinks to help people keep warm too. So
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, make a little party in Bryce.
little
That's in Bryce,
shindig,
right?
the Bryce Canyon party bus. Yeah, that's Bryce Canyon, way up.
And then we have Dave Matheson showing us when the sun sets and the stars pop out. We're standing over this ledge in front of the huge canyon with the huge sky, and Matheson will go over the stars and the mythology behind them. Pretty interesting.
It's amazing, and the side by sides are great, and the Brandon Powell, the cold plunges, all of it. It's fantastic. We want some fresh blood out there. So head over to contact@thecabin.com. We got a bunch of great reviews going on. If you're hesitant, but I mean, it's really once in a lifetime trip. Highly recommend.
How was your
it.
travel experience? We forgot to talk about that last week.
Well,
when
they
we
lost
talked
my
about your trip
bag.
to
I thought I
Shasta.
mentioned
Yeah,
I
you
got
did
it
mention
back.
that, but you got it back. It came back.
Yeah, it showed up. Not the next
Is it
day,
opened?
the day
Was
after.
it opened at all? Do you know? Or
I don't think so. I think everything was in there.
did Sean got her bag back too? Like you got all your luggage back?
Yes.
Okay, so how was it traveling over the borders and stuff?
No problem.
So the people at the airline, which airline did you take?
Well, I think it was WestJet.
To Seattle?
No, it was Air Canada to Vancouver. And then Air Canada again, I think, to Sacramento from Vancouver. And on the way back was WestJet and Air Alaska.
Okay. That's the mix up with the luggage. I swear I'm just going to do as much as possible, like same airlines nowadays. I think your chance of like things happening are way less if you're just on the same airline and not switching actual airlines. But so you're at the Calgary Airport Air Canada desk, and U.S. Customs has now pushed the jab question to the people at the desk. Then the airline.
I don't know. I don't talk to them. They just, when you book your ticket, it asks you.
Really? When you book your ticket? So what
Yeah.
about when you went to check in your bags?
Well, I don't talk to anyone when I check in my bags. I just go there and print out my bag tags and throw them on the thing. I don't ever talk to anyone until I get to security.
Okay, so then when you got to security, well, security doesn't
Well,
care.
I didn't
What about
go
when you
through
got to customs? Customs in Vancouver Airport, right?
Didn't ask. Didn't come up.
It didn't come up
No.
at all with the human. You had to talk to a human?
Mm-hmm.
Did you do the AI and the human? Did you have to fill out, like,
Just the human.
scan your passport, answer the questions in AI, and then go to the human?
Yeah, I think so. That's usually
So
what you have to do.
So you had to, I really wanted you to pay attention to this part because,
You always have to talk to
I
a
have-
human.
okay, but did you have to answer those questions on the computer too? But you never had to show any evidence of anything.
Never had to show any evidence of everything.
Oh,
Because you used to have to upload a picture. And I don't
Right.
think anyone was looking at the pictures. I think you could upload a picture of your dog and no one would even notice.
I didn't think dog was coming out of your mouth.
This
then.
time I just had to attest that I was vaccinated.
That was when you bought your ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was when I bought my ticket or when I checked in.
Right. It might have asked you on the check-in itself, like your actual.
When I was
okay, yeah,
checking in on with my phone. One of those.
Okay.
But it
And then
was
you just
no big
breeze
deal.
through the in-person thing part.
And I checked us in, so for Sean, it just never even ever came up.
what? What a reality we're living in.
I mean, he starts. The weird thing is, they start Googling like magic on the mountain because
What?
I was like, well, we're going to a conference in Shasta. So he's like, he's they're on the internet going to stuff. So they're on our website. That's always
What
a
did you
little weird.
say?
I never
Yeah.
want to say I'm working.
No,
So-
I know that's the thing, right?
I
So
just
what
pretend I'm
did
an
you say?
attendee. I'm an attendee.
Right. And you said magic on the mountain.
Yeah, I was in too deep already. I'd already said too much.
So what
But I
did he
mean,
tell you?
last event I drove to, and I said I was just going to meet up with some buddies. They searched.
Yeah,
me,
and then
so.
they started asking of all this. Then they started asking, "What buddies? Have you met them before in person? Internet buddies?" Like,
It's better to
what
be
kind
as truthful as possible. So
totally. But you don't have to just go deep into the actual website right away. So when you
I
said
would just
Magic
say I
on the
was going to
Mountain,
this, and he's like, "Oh, what's it called?" And it's Magic on the Mountain. Then he couldn't find it, and I was like, "Well, I don't see it on here." And then I was like, "Well, type in contact at the cabin," and then. You know.
and what did he say?
He's like, "So this isn't your thing, though, right?" And I was like, "No, no,
what?
We're just attendees."
Oh my God, really?
Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to get into all that.
No, not with them. Yeah. And it's like, no, it's none of your business if it's mine or not.
None of your fucking business.
But
it wasn't bad.
That
it
is
really
interesting.
wasn't bad.
How that is. So did he make any comments about it? Like how did you find out about this, or who do you know these people?
No, I think he just thought we were fucking weird by the end of it. It moved on from thinking we were a national security threat to just thinking we were fucking weirdos.
Because you're going to some weird conference in Mount Shasta.
But Shasta's a good place for it in that regard. They expect it.
I know exactly. Yeah.
So we're going to keep it there next year. We got the tickets on sale for next year if people want to make a deposit or get their name. Unless it's a great event. It's only getting better. Probably only getting bigger. We moved it back a few months. It'll be a bit warmer. We'll get a little more daylight. And that Crystal Lake or Castle Lake hike will be open. The one we wanted to do.
Cool.
Yeah, and then there's another hike very close to the cabin. We'll do again and
that's all. That's all at contactatthecabin.ca.
Yeah, the Utah event that's coming up right away, and then we got the Canada event coming up later this year. Some Randall events, a bunch of stuff going on at contactatthecabin.com. Sign up for that newsletter. Sign up for this newsletter. Support the show. grimerica.ca/support. We are a value for value podcast. And we know that there's a bunch of people downloading the show, probably listening to the show. We could use it for a few more people supporting the show. grimerica.ca/support, or maybe head over to grimericaoutlaw.ca. Sign up for a show, a plus subscription over there. Or make a one-time donation at grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for the YouTube channels, even if you're not watching them. I guess it probably helps with some algo shit or something. Review the show, share the show. That's the other big one, is you got to share this motherfucker. Nobody, none of the social medias or YouTube or none of this platforms that we're on are promoting us anymore at this point in any regard.
Oh, that's so weird. You're making a point about that.
On Twitter anymore. So we just need you guys all have the socials. Like the socials probably still work for you guys. If you posted some shows on your social media or however you do that. But tell your friends about the show. It's important.
I was thinking about that today, actually, because I was thinking back at people talking about, we have our Grimerica Outlawed podcast as well. And the second half of that is $6.39 a month. You get the second half of that and some audiobooks in that feed as well. And I was thinking to anybody that had, a problem with that or whatever, it's just thinking back to if we weren't censored and shadow banned, and if the whole if this wasn't such a battle, it would be completely different. No wonder why we all these independent creators have to sort of try and make their way in it and pay for expenses. I mean, it would be so different if we had normal algorithms the whole way through this and normal searchability, but every popular mainstream channel now has their own podcast. I mean, it's also been saturated with them now. So in the beginning, it was just us independent ones. Now everybody has a podcast, including the mainstream. So it's just the whole landscape has changed.
And they're actively trying to stomp ours out.
Yeah.
Don't let them. Share the show. Support the show. grimerica.ca/support. Just join the chat. Sign up for the newsletter. What else you got? You got anything else?
Oh, you know what else?
Yeah, quote.
So, yeah, I do. But before that, do you remember in the chat, somebody was talking about this cranberry pulling?
Is that the same as oil pulling for your teeth?
Well, yeah, you put cranberry juice in your mouth and swish it around for 2 minutes and then spit it out.
Oh,
I was arguing with Ryan. I was arguing with Ryan in the chats because I was like, I went to find, like, in our Safeway, there's a million different flavors of cranberry drink, but I didn't think you'd be able to get like pure cranberry. So the other day when I was shopping, I stopped at that section thinking back on our conversation, and I saw this pure cranberry juice. I'm like, they do have pure juice here, like pure. So I'm like, I'm going to try this. Because a bunch of us in the chats were like, I'll put it under the category of I'll believe it. I won't believe it, but I'll try it anyways, you know? So I swish it around for two minutes, spit it out, and oh my God, shit comes out, dude.
Really?
Like big fucking wiry chunks, and then this other big block, and I'm thinking, what is this stuff? And I mean, maybe it's just gunk but I mean, I brushed my teeth, like my mouth felt clean. So where is this stuff coming from?
You floss every day?
Well, no, but I usually feel when there's something stuck. I don't floss every day, but I floss every week or something like that, you know?
Oh.
So then I did it again.
And you have more of it? Maybe I'll try. Can I use I thought I could
have
just
more.
use
Yeah,
like
don't go
olive
buy
oil.
some because it's almost hard. You can't even hold it in your mouth. It's so tart and tangy. Like it's just a struggle. You're just breathing it in and trying not to swallow it. And then, you know, you got to swish it around for 2 minutes. So I'll bring a little jar to you.
Yeah, I'll give it a whirl. It'd be interesting because I am a daily flosser.
Yeah.
I wonder if I'll notice a difference.
See what comes out. And I'm going to try it again after a few days and see if it's just gunk. But I mean, either way, it seems like it's probably a good way to pull whatever bullshit you got going on in your mouth and throat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there you have it.
There you have it.
It's true.
It's the profound quote of the week. Darren, can you guess it? It's the profound quote of the week. Can you guess the human who spoke it or wrote it down?
What if it's not a human?
Profound quote of the week.
You ready?
You have a quote by like a parrot or something?
In early democracies, all individual human rights were granted on the ground that man is God's creature. That is, freedom was given to the individual conditionally in the assumption of his constant religious responsibility. Such was the heritage of the preceding 1,000 years. 200 or even 50 years ago, it would have seemed quite impossible in America that an individual be granted boundless freedom with no purpose, simply for the satisfaction of his whims. Subsequently, however, all such limitations were eroded everywhere in the West. A total emancipation occurred from the moral heritage of Christian centuries with their great reserves of mercy and sacrifice. The West has finally achieved the rights of man, and even to excess, but man's sense of responsibility to God and society has grown dimmer and dimmer. In the past decades, the legalistic selfishness of the Western approach to the world has reached its peak, and the world has found itself in a harsh spiritual crisis and a political impasse. All the celebrated technological achievements of progress, including the conquest of outer space, do not redeem the 20th century's moral poverty, which no one could have imagined even as late as the 19th century.
H.G. Wells.
No, but it did remind me of that era. It's from Solzhenitsyn.
Oh, that makes sense too.
And it's from a newsletter I got from Free to Fly. It's an organization to try and help the airplanes and airports and all that stuff through this whole era of the lockdowns to continue fly without all these mandates and stuff like that. So don't know if you ever heard of them or not.
Never heard of that shit.
Yeah.
They didn't do great. You got a bio?
Oh, yeah. Right. So, yeah, Buzz Coastin. So from 28 to 49, he's a well-paid corporate sales exec. We always love these stories of execs turned to some sort of spiritual quest. So he traveled all over the U.S. and internationally, too. He made big bucks, a lot of great perks, but his heart was no longer in it. So at 49, he chucked it for an unstructured life of adventure. it didn't start out to do it that way. It just kind of happened by accident. All he had to do is to make that happen was to go with the flow. So we went on from living high on the hog to living with pizza, making hippies, outlaws who were living illegally in a Hawaiian jungle. And he did that off and on for 5 years. And then he made a book about it. It's the story of how that came about and what happened to him during his time with the Kalalau Outlaws. Kalalau? Kalalau.
Cthulhu? Probably not that one. All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed. We had a fun chat. We hope you guys enjoyed as well with the one and only Buzz Coastin.
Wow, that's quite a palace you got there on that green screen.
Thank you.
That's his real house, Buzz Coastin.
Oh, is it? Well, that's great.
That's
Good for you.
something to aspire to, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know. It seems like that'd be a lot to maintain if it was real.
So welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. Really. I've been listening to you guys for a long time, off and on.
Wow.
And,
right on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then seeing you, on this screen is, a whole different experience.
Yeah. Well, I should have told you that, we do audio, we record audio, but usually we see each other in Zoom. But I mean,
okay. Normally I could just, in reality, I could flick a button and pop on, but not in my case. I got to plug things in and move things around.
That's okay. That's okay.
All right.
I mean, big shout out to Mark from My Family Thinks I'm Crazy too. I listened to your show with him. It was good.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Mark. And in fact, I just listened to him, do the interview with, Ronnie Pontiac today.
Yeah.
And
I
that was a good one
he
too.
Came out with that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I left a whole bunch of questions on the that I didn't ask with Ronnie, so hopefully we'll have him back again one day.
Oh yeah, well, Mark's really into that stuff, so it was right up his alley, really.
Yeah.
So
what's your? Let's talk about the genesis of your story and all that. I love this corporate, the leaving the corporate world story.
Yeah, well, I had accidentally gotten into corporate America and spent 20 years as a sales executive, traveling mostly in the U.S., but sometimes internationally. And it really paid well, and it was a fun gig. But I was only doing it for the money by the time I got to, age 48. And I really thought I was going to get out by 50, buy my way out, have a lot of money to buy my way out. And that didn't happen. So, in fact, what was happening was I was running out of money and going bankrupt. So on a spur of a moment, after knowing that it was going to happen and what the timing was, I decided I'd go on a vision quest in Hawaii and see if I could find some answers. So I used miles to do that, so I booked some first-class seats to get there and back, and I booked some 5-star resorts with hotel points. But when I went to book the flight, the guy told me that the only date he had available for a first-class seat to Hawaii in the time range I wanted was leaving on Friday the 13th. So I thought, well, that's a good omen. That's a sign. And as I progressed along this trip, more of these kind of weird signs would pop up. And then one of the things I did is I booked, on an impulse, I booked a New Age guru as, just to do, I don't know what. I really don't know why I did it. But I did, and I spent good money on it. And what she did really wasn't that helpful. But when we would talk before and after the sessions, I would get some really interesting advice from her. And one of the things that she advised me to do was to think about how to manifest this money that I needed. I needed about $100,000 to keep me whole. And I thought it kind of wacky, but I figured, well, what I got to lose, let me try it. And I tried it, and it worked. I ended up with $110,000 in the bank. 50100101. So that kind of kept me out of corporate America for a while, but I still didn't know what to do. And
So
on
how
my
did-
vision quest,
Before you
So
get
go
into
ahead.
before you get into the vision quest, there must have been some seed or something like you don't just jump into a vision quest. Like there must have been some nagging or some kind of spiritual, curiosity or something.
yeah. In fact, it's kind of like Don Quixote's thing. Don Quixote's he's 50 and he's read a whole bunch of books about stuff, and then all of a sudden he decides he's going to go out and learn some things about it. Well, I was kind of the same way. I had read a whole bunch of books about this kind of stuff. The Vision Quest idea I got from Joe Campbell's writings. And I knew a little bit about the hero's journey. In writing the book, I found out I was on the hero's journey. At that time, I was just thought I was on the hero's clusterfuck and going nowhere fast. But anyway, but I didn't have this whole manifesting part down. In corporate America, they taught us in sales to goal set, and that had worked for me, but I didn't think of it as manifesting. I just wrote down I just thought of it as goal setting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it worked too. It did work for me there. But
So where did the
I didn't
110 come from then?
It came out of my past. Whenever this kind of thing happens to me, it usually comes somewhere out of my reality that that I'm not.
Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah.
It was such a long shot that I didn't even think about it.
Exactly.
But it appeared while I was on the vision quest, and I thought, wow, this could be it. This might be the thing.
So what does the vision quest entail? Like, is this a journey into the jungle or some psychedelics, or what kind of vision quest is this?
It was very tame by any kind of vision quest standard. It's almost a sin to call it a vision quest. I was staying at 5-star resorts and flying first class. It was very far from torturous, except I was mentally tortured by the financial difficulties I had. There was no physical torture. And no, I wasn't even into any of that stuff. I wasn't a camper. I didn't like the jungle per se. I liked Hawaii, but I thought Hawaii was, 5-star resorts and, fancy restaurants and stuff like that. And so the Vision Quest was part of that. And in the end of the Vision Quest, I ended up staying in a more rustic environment and more local people. And those people turned out to be the key for me moving to Hawaii, which was something I hadn't thought of on the Vision Quest. So the Vision Quest kind of set me up for two things. It set me up to be financially able to move to Hawaii. And then a few months later, the opportunity presented itself. And so I did that.
So where did you, did the Valley come into play at all at this point, or?
Yeah. On the Vision Quest, every island that I went to, there would be at least one person, sometimes two, who would randomly come up to me and talk to me about this place called Kalalau Valley. And they would always tell me about three things. And not always did they say all the three things, but out of the group that would meet with me, they would tell me about the Kalalau Outlaws. And they would describe them as a highly spiritually minded group of people who were living at one with nature and things like that. And then they would tell me about the spiritual pizza, which was somehow the specialty of the house there. And people were hiking in from all over the world to get this spiritual pizza thing that was going on there. And they also had a library, which was called the Kalalau Library. And
weird.
Those three things kept coming up. And the library thing was funny because it really, you think it's like your library was bigger in the back of you than that Kalalau Library, but people would hike in and leave books and stuff. And so we just built up a collection, and it was the library. That's the first David Icke book I ever read was in Kalalau Valley.
So you're getting drawn to this valley.
Which one was it?
Right. I get.
Go ahead, Derek.
Pardon me?
Which David Icke book?
I don't remember, but it was the one where he talks about the lizards. And I thought, this guy came up with a great idea of how to not get killed. Just say the lizards are involved and nobody's going to that. They're going to, why kill the lizard guy? Come on, really.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I thought it was, I thought the lizard thing was, a cover for him. I don't know. But that was the book I read where he talks about the lizard. So and that's how I got it.
Kalalau Valley. How do you pronounce it? Kalalau. Kalalau Valley. That's on the far. Is that the far northeastern part of all the chain of islands? Like you're kind of on the very edge there. So that's in Kauai, right?
Right. It's on Kauai, and it's in the middle of nowhere. You have to hike along a 10-mile trail.
Oh, it's 10 miles. Eh? Wow.
It's a 10-mile cliffside trail. And that trail, in fact, there's a point on the trail at 8 Mile. It's actually at 7.5 miles into the trail. You come to a place called Crawler's Ledge. And that's where a lot of people turn around and go back. It's like, I'm not doing that. Now, I don't know anybody that's fallen, and maybe the people that would fall had already left, but that's one of the places on the trail. So it's a really gnarly experience.
So do you go through, like, I'm just looking at the map here. Do you go through that Waimea Canyon Trail to the Koki State Park, or is that that's like the inland way, right? There's a that's the you got to be hardcore to do that. I mean, I only know one guy in modern times that's been able to go from there down to the valley. And a German tourist fell off the cliff one time, and he went down through the valley, and the Outlaws helped him out. But nobody goes that way. The trail is, if you're looking at the map, go to the far right of the island, and you'll see a place at the end there. You'll see Hanalei, and then further north on the shore, there's a beach area called K.A. Yeah.
Right.
Tiny little beach. I mean, those.
Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Hyannis State Park and K.A. Beach right there. And so the trail starts there, and then it goes out to the valley from there.
Oh,
now
it actually shows it on the map, actually. Even.
Oh yeah, it's a world famous trail. It's one of the 10 most difficult hikes in the world.
Wow. People
just fly to the island just to hike that trail. So and the people that do it are actually adventurous. So so the spiritual pizza thing started spreading around the world. People would hear about they want to do the trail, and you got pizza at the end. That's great. And then people would hike in, bringing the ingredients so they could get the spiritual pizza. So that was the story behind that.
So does this valley, like, what's the valley like once you're in there? Like, I kept picturing this valley like almost like a gorgeous jungle valley with a stream, kind of, you could overlook the ocean in some spots. Like, give us a sense of the.
Well, okay. So when I lived there were actually communities around the valleys. So I lived in the Bluff community. So it's about 150 feet above the ocean on the rocks. If you look at the beach area, it would be, I'm looking at the way you're looking at it. So it would be to the right of the beach area. It's about a mile from the bluff to the beach.
Yeah.
And then there was people living up valley. There was the up valley community. So I lived on the bluff for most of my stays there because I just liked that area. It was also, we played a game with the state called Ranger Scratch, where they would fly in with helicopters and chase us around. And it was always easier to win that game if you were on the bluff than you were on the beach. Being on the beach, you could easily get caught. But if you're on the bluff, you had a lot of jungle to work with. So yeah, it was a trip.
So what does this valley go, like, this must have been a spot that the indigenous Hawaiian peoples used long ago, right? I mean, it goes way back, or
yeah, it's a very, very sacred place, very special place, and mainly because it's hard to access, but also what we say in Hawaiian, they say the word mana, it indicates a kind of spiritual power. And so the mana in Kalalau is extremely high. And really, the reason most of the outlaws stayed in there was because of the mana. I mean, there was no other good reason to be in such a remote location, but the power of the place is kind of fascinating because the things that are not normal in everyday life, like I'm talking about manifesting was a common practice in Kalalau. It wasn't something that was considered weird or strange. It was normal. What you needed would appear when you needed it. And sometimes what you didn't need would appear too. But, it was a magical place. And so that was what the attractive feature was. Plus, it's very beautiful. It's extremely beautiful. So those two things were the attraction.
So the outlaws, like they're not necessarily criminals. They're called outlaws because I guess you're not really supposed to live there, right? Is that
right? It is technically it's not illegal, but it is against park regulations to live there. So they were dubbed the Outlaws. We would play a game where they would chase us. If you got caught, you'd get a ticket, and then you'd have to go to court, and you couldn't pay it off. You had to go to court. But back in the day, the courthouse was in Honolulu, and it was just a party scene. You get a ticket, you go there and have a good time and party with the group. And then, and nobody had any money. So there was an ex-outlaw by the name of Tom who ran he had some kind of program where you could do community service for Tom, and that would be your fine. And so, the Outlaws had the whole thing rigged. It was a fun game.
And this is probably like, I was thinking back at the timing. I listened to a lot of your audiobook and read some of your notes here and heard you on Mark's show. And I kind of felt like it was a more recent thing. But when I look back at the timing, it's almost like the good old days of the 90s and the early 2000s, right?
Right. This scene doesn't exist in there anymore, to my knowledge. The last Outlaw, I talked to Ronnie, the mayor, a couple of weeks ago, and he told me he had been in for a couple months recently. And he said, "There's nobody there. There's nobody there."
Like nobody at all, or just nobody?
Oh, well, he said nobody living there. Some tourists came in and out, but nothing going on. He didn't tell a good story about it. So I'm assuming it's kind of a dead scene now, and it's all over. Because
the hikers that will go in there, like they can camp, right? There's a limited number of camping that you can buy a
right
for.
Yeah, they have a whole program where you can get a permit, and I think you've got 3 to 5 days. You can do the hike and stay and leave. I don't know what the exact timing is, but they have a whole system worked out, and the price has gone way up. I hear it used to be like $30. I think it's much more than that now.
So is there a lot of do they go to the party too? Like, is it kind of like, do you hike in and then the campers even sort of they hang out and party for a few days? Like, is there always a few hundred campers there at a time kind of thing? Or
in the summertime, yeah. In the summertime, you get a lot of campers, and then, a lot of them either discovered the scene or knew about it before they got there. And so they can spend as much time as they want hanging out with the Outlaws. And, the Outlaws would provide the entertainment, there was always parties going on, spiritual pizza available, things like that.
And they would just come and go, and you guys would stay.
Right. In fact, they would help supply us because, that trail is so difficult. Nobody wants to hike out what they hiked in. They hike in way too much, and then they would just, what we call, kicked it down to us before they left. So we would get resupplied a lot of times by the tourists.
Interesting.
But that story doesn't happen until the way I got there was by fits and starts. I never really intended to go to that valley. I kept hearing about it, but it wasn't something that I thought I was going to do. And but when I moved to Hawaii, I moved into this little off the grid shack in the middle of nowhere, and many of the people who lived there had lived in Kalalau Valley before.
Yeah.
And then so. What happened was 9/11 happened shortly after my arrival. And when that happened, I thought, I'm not going back. That's nuts. There's no way I'm going back. I don't know how I'm going to stay, but I'm not going back. And so I stayed, but, eventually I was going to run out of money. And so as I was coming up on my 50th birthday in March, I knew I was once again going to be in the same boat I was when I started the Vision Quest. But I didn't use the tools that I had used on the Vision Quest to get the money. This time I thought my way out of it, and everything I thought of did not work.
You thought or bought?
Thought. I was thinking. I put on my thinking cap, and I was going to think my way out of this. I had all kind of schemes to get the money and to stay and all that kind of stuff. None of it worked. And but I had to go through the experience of losing everything, to go down to absolute zero, to go down to no food and no money, and to live there in that space for I don't know, a few days. It wasn't forever. The money thing I ran out of maybe a month before the food, but after the food ran out, I had about 3 or 4 days of no food. And then all of a sudden, I had food. And then shortly after that, I had money. And then, things started to change. And then I was back on my feet again. But I had gone through and lived through my worst fear. And so I think that was one of the benefits of that.
Kind of part of the hero's journey, that part, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think you have to get that point where you just get down to nothing and you're right there in the real reality. And then all of a sudden it comes back. And so that's what's happened to me. And Kalalau played a big part in that comeback because, I had to go there to learn that, the lessons I needed to learn in there to go through the next experience I needed to go through. And then I went through it and came out and okay.
So what was it like living off? I mean, because especially nowadays, right? There's all people talking about off grid all the time. I mean, sometimes it's not going off grid too, but I mean, in Hawaii, it must be the ideal place in some ways.
Yes, it is. If you're going to go off
temperatures
the
like
grid,
80 degrees every day, all through the year,
Well, not quite, but that is the idea you get. It does seem like that. There is a winter in Hawaii, and depending on where you are, it can be a gnarly experience. But our winter is nothing like you have, so it's not quite that bad. It's rainy and it's colder than usual. That's our winter in Hawaii.
Because you were off grid for a while, right?
I did a year and a half in the shack, and that was I never want to do that again. But it was very primitive. I had one solar panel that could only power a water pump, and that was it. I mean, that was all. And I had I could cook on. I had a camp stove that I could cook on with propane. And one of the guys in the neighborhood taught me how to get a refrigerator by putting block ice in my cooler, and that would last for about 4 days. But I had to change, a lot of things and learn how to live without electricity. And that was really an interesting experience, both in Kalalau and at the little grass shack. No electricity is an eye-opening experience, believe me.
Oh, yeah.
Try it sometime.
Yeah. Well, no, especially nowadays. It's really bad nowadays. I mean, it would have been a tad easier back then. But where was the little grass shack? Was it on Kauai too?
No, that was on the Big Island, on the Hamakua coast, kind of in between Hilo and Wanakoa.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a 300-mile distance. I had to fly there, and I was so concerned about going that when I went to the airport the first time to go to Kalalau, I left my wallet at home, so I had to go back. So I'll go tomorrow. Then the next day I went and I left my ticket at home. Okay, well, I'll go back and get the ticket and I'll go tomorrow. On the third day, I finally got through the whole thing, got through the TSA check, and then I had left my sleeping bag in the truck, but I got it before I left. And so in my hike in, all those things, once again, disappeared on me. When I was hiking into Kalalau, I spent the night halfway there and on the trail. And when I woke up in the morning, my wallet wasn't with me. And then after the wallet was missing, that when my ticket was gone too, So here I am in the middle of the trail, and the things that I'm afraid of losing, both before I got there and then during the hike, I have lost. And now I have to make a decision. Do I go back out and look for the wallet? Because maybe I left it out there in the stash. I had stashed some stuff out there. So I think maybe it's there. Or do I just hike on in and then deal with it when I came out? So I hiked on in and dealt with it when I came out. And fortunately, I found it. I found the wallet in the stash when I came out. But all those things were, compounding, and I was always worried about money. And not only have I lost my wallet, but I'm losing money, and I'm going to go broke, and all that stuff would run through my head the whole time.
How long is the hike in then? Do you have to stay overnight pretty much? Or can you do it in a day?
For me, I did. If you're a Kalalau outlaw, I know outlaws that can make the whole trail in about 5 hours. A really experienced camper might be able to do it in 10. A lot of campers, what they do is, even people with permits, they'll hike to what's called Hanakoa, which is about 6 miles in, and then they'll finish off the next day with the remaining 4 or 5 miles they got to go. So no, it's not an easy hike. You have to be really in shape and, know your stuff to really do it well. I've hiked it in a day, after a few years of doing it. But the first time in, I was lucky I think it took me 3 days the first time I went in.
So has the Big Island got a lot of remote spots like that?
Yeah,
that's Kauai. That's Kauai.
Oh, that's
well,
on
no,
Kauai.
yeah. The Kalalau is on Kauai, and there are remote spots on Kauai, but the Big Island is you could put all the other Hawaiian islands into the Big Island and still have room left over. So there's a lot of free space on the Big Island, but Kauai is much smaller and much more densely populated now than when I lived there, even.
So like a small island like that, I mean, it would drive me crazy. Do you get to know like the whole island then? By the time you leave, you must know that motherfucker inside and out.
Yeah, it's a small world when you live on a small island like that. It's in fact, one of the stories in the book, I talk about the night Rick choked Brenna, and I got a lot of feedback from different outlaws about different things. And one of the feedback was, well, everybody's on the island is going to read this book, and then they're going to know Rick did that, and you're going to. I'm like, Rick doesn't have a good enough reputation to worry about that. But anyway, that's how small the island is. That the outlaws are worried that the neighborhood might be disrupted by the story.
Did the neighbors sometimes become outlaws? Like, would the locals kind of go do that thing too, or is it strictly end up being a tourist thing?
Check this out. This is a trippy story in here. So my second time in, I meet a guy at the KA Beach named Roy, and it turns out Roy and I went to high school together. I didn't know Roy in high school. I went to a huge high school, and Roy and I didn't know each other, but we went to high school together. So I'm like, wow, what a trip, man. And, that's great. And he's like, oh, trip on this. There's 3 others besides us from the same high school that lived in this valley. I'm like, no way, yeah. So he tells me the names and I know who they are. And sure enough, there were 5 of us from this high school that had lived in high school in New Jersey who had lived in Kalalau Valley. And so there isn't 3 guys from the Waimea High School that have lived in Kalalau Valley. Well, there's 3, but they're not 5.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. Well, you see, the local, I don't know how to say this in a kind way, but there's a kind of a plantation mentality among the people who have born and raised there, where they think that somehow the outlaws are getting over on the system, and they don't want to be part of that sort of thing. They want to do the right thing, play by the rules, and the outlaws are obviously not playing by the rules. However, it brings me to another point in this story, which is there were 2 local people who were Hawaiians who were called into the valley by the Aumakua. The Aumakua are the ancestral powers of that valley, the power that gives the mana to the valley. And so the 2 Hawaiians were called in by the Aumakua. One was called in to be the kahu, which is kind of like the caretaker of the heiau, which is the sacred place in Kalalau to be monitored by the kahu. And the other Hawaiian was a guy named Alikai, who was he fell overboard on his boat and went unconscious. And the Aumakua saved him and told him, "We saved your life so that you can go live in Kalalau Valley."
Wow, what did he have? So did he have like an NDE, a complete NDE, or? And
it was, I don't know what you would call it. I just know he told me the story where he said, I got hit my head, fell off the boat, and the next thing I know, my arm is hanging onto the boat. And the Aumakua are talking to me and telling me to come live in Kalalau Valley. So,
no
so
mermaids?
These 2 guys, no, but they come in and live there. And then of course they get more, hassled than we do, because when the Rangers show up in the helicopters, we're all running and hiding, and they're staying in place. They're not moving. This is their home. There's no reason for them to go anywhere. They've been called in by the Aumakua. Except that they're
on the public land or whatever, though.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Well, so Alikai, he wasn't political about it. He was just being a very Alikai about it. But Ikaika knew that he had the civil right to be there. It was part of the Hawaiian Constitution. So he would just,
interesting. Yeah.
So he would.
Kind of like Darren's got his rights in Canada, kind of same thing.
Yeah, except that in Hawaii they do everything they can to make sure you can exercise them. And so what happened was they persecuted this guy to the point they would fly in just for him.
What?
And arrest just him and then fly him out and put him in jail. And then every time he would go to trial, a special judge would show up. And guess what that judge's name was? Frank Rothschild.
Oh my God.
Frank Rothschild. And I was in court with him one time because I got tagged, and my case came up, and then I was done. And then all of a sudden his case comes up, and in walks Frank and sits down, and he's the judge for just this case. And then there's a Japanese guy who's a special prosecutor too. And he starts speaking to Ikaika in Hawaiian. And Hawaiian says, I don't speak the white man's version of Hawaiian. Speak to me in English.
So was that judge like a specialist in constitutional, like indigenous constitutional laws and common law and stuff like that? Or
I think he was a specialist in being a Rothschild. And, you know, the Hawaiians had their land stolen from them by
but why did they care? So why did the Rangers give a shit about you guys? I mean, the campers are there anyways. And how many outlaws are there? Like
the Rangers were just doing their job.
Yeah, but why? Yeah.
Right. And so it's people. Okay. So here's how Hawaii got stolen. The missionaries and the U.S. government and the big agricultural companies all combined to overthrow the Hawaiian kingdom and take it over. Right. Those three groups still run the state of Hawaii today. Yeah. And the descendants of the missionaries are still in power. And so they're the ones who were coming for Ikaika.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that, like with all this sort of trauma over the hundreds of years in Hawaii, like I wouldn't expect them to fold like a cheap tent through COVID like they did. I mean, but I guess you've answered it already, probably, that it's under the control of, you know, the same public control the other states, right?
Okay. So public safety was one of the tactics they used to overtake the kingdom.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like right out of 2020.
Right. Everything they did then was just a precursor to what they did recently. And when Ikaika took this to the Supreme Court of Hawaii, and when they ruled against him, the reason they agreed that he had the legal right to do it, except that they could decide whether they would let him do it or not. That's how the Constitution is written. You have the legal right to do it if we say so. But the reason they told him he couldn't do it was for public safety. It was just too unsafe. For who? I don't know. But it was public safety was the issue, was the why he couldn't live there as the kahu.
Which was also, wasn't that part of the original takeover too from the missionaries?
Right. When the missionaries co-opted the whole culture, they destroyed it from the inside out. And then like, for example, they married into the Hawaiian royalty, you know, to give them access to land easier. They created the written Hawaiian language. They never had a written language. So they created what modern Hawaiian is basically missionary Hawaiian, created out of a hodgepodge of dialects, and they created the spelling. And it was all for, you know, conforming everybody into a mindset. And then after 40 years of that, they made the language illegal. And so they did everything they could to destroy the psyche of the Hawaiian people in order to steal their land. And the Hawaiians were dying off of natural causes rapidly anyway. And then this leprosy thing came up, and they used that as a great leverage against them.
So then they conducted medical experiments and
right,
in order to protect them.
When was that? Exactly. What was it like? What year?
That happened in the 1860s. It started, but it really didn't.
That's so interesting.
It didn't intensify until the time when they were prepared to take over the kingdom in the 1890s. They really pushed the button on the thing, and they started really rounding up Hawaiians and sending them off to Molokai to exile. So, and there's a famous battle.
Matches the Canadian timeline too, eh, Darren? In a way.
Yeah, and the American,
yeah, in fact,
and like all of them.
Sure.
Kind of.
A lot of this was happening during that same time. It was the same game plan everywhere. And it was just amazing to look at, because I didn't realize this either. I had to look into this, and I was like, wow, this seems like a familiar pattern here. You know, co-opt the language, you know, co-opt the religion, just take over everything, and
the
then
culture, the spirituality. Yeah.
right. So yeah,
So what were you going to say when I interrupted you about there was a war, a battle, maybe?
Yeah. So the famous battle was called the Leper War of Kauai, and there was a guy named Kalalau. That sounds a lot like Kalalau, but his name is Kalalau. And he decided that he was not going to be rounded up and herded out. And a lot of others thought that same thing. But Kalalau, they came for him because the first group of, they've 3 or 4, soldiers came in to get him. And he ended up killing one of them. And so they were like, okay, this is not good. So they bring in 35 more soldiers and a cannon, and they chase him around the valley for a month. And he kills 2 more. One of them accidentally kills himself, and they never catch him ever. He dies in the valley of natural causes later. So, but they spent a lot of money and time, chasing this guy around, and they never could catch him. And they tried everything they could to kill him and his family.
On a little island?
On a little island.
In a little valley. Well, not a little valley, but in just one portion of it, right?
Right. Well, they were chasing him all over the valley, but he knew the valley a lot better than they did, and so there was no way they could catch him. Every time they thought they got him, the one time they thought they had him in a cave, and they shot a cannon at the cave for a couple hours, and he was, he didn't get him, and then they quarantined the place, and then somehow he got out, and they never caught the guy. They hardly ever saw him.
Huh. I'm just looking on the map too, like the elevation map of Hawaii, and it really looks. It would be interesting to know what it was like before the end of the ice age, where the water rose like 300 or 400 feet, because it's quite a large, and it goes all the way. The chain seems to go all the way sort of east.
Well, the Hawaiian Islands were sitting on top of a mountain range, and the mountain range, and the mountain range moves. It's a floating, and these islands and the mountain range are all moving at about the rate of your hair grows, and so Kauai is about 6 million years old, and Big Island is only about 1 million years old, and that's why the Big Island is the Big Island. In 6 million years, the Big Island will be where Kauai is, and Kauai will be somewhere between Midway and where the Big Island will be. But I won't be around in 6 million years, so I won't be able to verify that.
Maybe you'll be like stuck on a hard drive.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So back to the question about them sort of folding like a cheap tent. So did they just have no, wasn't there any, I wish there was sort of more pushback from the indigenous people when these sort of mandates and shit come around, right? Like Hawaii got pretty bad.
Yeah, well, Hawaii is kind of, like I said, the plantation mentality is very strong there. The Hawaiians are, I don't think there are many Hawaiians left. I don't know any Hawaiian who's pure blood Hawaiian, but because it was a concerted effort to destroy their culture. So one of the things they did was they brought in thousands and thousands of foreign laborers. The Chinese were the first, the Japanese were the next, Koreans came. Then a lot of people from the Azores came. And within, by 1860, half of the population was now foreigners and controlled by the white missionaries. And the Hawaiians were dying, and they had menial roles in society. They had a royalty, but the royalty had no real power. They were just a puppet government for the missionaries. They tried, but, there was nothing they could do. So, the plan worked so well that the Hawaiians were shocked when they finally realized they had their island stolen from them. But that was already after the fact. It had happened a long time before they officially ended it.
Darren, do you got any questions?
Well, it seems like the same sort of colonialism that was sort of rippling around the globe at that same time and trying to destroy whatever these motherfuckers had going on, whether, for some, would seem for a reason other than land.
Well, it's hard to say. They always are land grabbing and stealing resources and resource extraction. That's the main thing, in this scene. They're always trying to cop resources as much as they can. And in this case, they decided that they wanted to turn the islands into an agricultural production center for, industrial kind of fruit like bananas and pineapples and things like that. And pineapples aren't even indigenous to Hawaii, and yet people think of Hawaii and pineapples as being synonymous, but they're from Brazil, but they were brought to Hawaii because they would grow well in Hawaii. Anything would grow well in Hawaii. But unfortunately, that process, stripped the land of its nutrients and made some of it infertile, and it's poor land management all the way around on the island. It's really poorly distributed. A lot of the land is all locked up in these trusts that are owned by the missionary families.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I would, if I was a missionary family, I wouldn't want to leave there either.
They haven't.
I want to leave leave my blood on the island. So
yeah,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say they still have a lot of power. So
yeah,
that's their trip.
So let's now that we have a whole whack of context, let's talk about how the spiritual pizza started.
Well, the spiritual pizza story is very mundane. I use it as a metaphor, really, because I did find spiritual pizza there. But the spiritual story, the spiritual pizza story goes like this. There was a period of time when they were kind of low on food and things weren't working. And all of a sudden, they had enough ingredients to make a pizza. They hadn't done it before, so they thought, let's try this. And they used some casties to create a Dutch oven. And they had the ingredients, so they made a pizza out of it. And then my friend Ala, who was there, she says that I could taste that thing. I knew it was going to be an amazing experience when I had it. I just couldn't believe that I was going to get it. And when I put it in my mouth, it was the best thing I ever tasted. And then I heard Ronnie say, you know what this is? This is spiritual pizza. And she said, and we all knew he was right. And that was how it was born. And then when I moved to Hawaii, I stayed in a guy's house. The first time I stayed in his house, he was in Kalalau Valley with a friend. And then the second time, a year later, I came and I stayed in his house again. And once again, he was in Kalalau Valley with his friend. And his friend was there getting married and a spiritual pizza wedding because he had had such a great experience the first time he went in. And with the spiritual pizza thing, he said, I got to get married in here and have a spiritual pizza wedding. And then party. He came in specifically for spiritual pizza on his 50th birthday and had a killer birthday party on Kalalau Beach.
So how did it grow? Like, how did it go viral in a way before virality was even a thing?
Yeah, word of mouth. It would slowly. Now Pierce lived at the end of the road, near KA Beach. And so a lot of the outlaws started working for Pierce. I don't know. I know a little bit about how that came about, but yeah, some of the outlaws were working for Pierce, and
they were Pierce
Brosnan 007.
007.
And they were
one of the better ones too.
Yeah, he was, and a good guy. So anyway, the outlaws were always hyping him about you got to go in, and then finally it was coming up on his 50th birthday, and so. He went in.
Another 50th birthday thing. Wow.
Right. Yeah, a lot of 50th birthdays in Kalalau.
So the people started bringing ingredients in then too? So you could kind of...
Yeah. Right. You get that message, when you hear about it, like when I was going to go in, everybody was telling me, don't forget to bring the cheese and so there's a list that you got to bring the cheese, you got to bring flour, you got to bring the yeast, and tomato paste in cans. And any other condiments would be welcomed as well. But those are the primary ingredients for the
pineapple
pizza. Pineapple would work, although I don't know anybody that did that one. We never had a pineapple pizza that I can recall.
There wasn't a controversy about that back then?
No, I don't even know if there's a controversy now. I've never had pineapple on my pizza, but it sounds a little odd, but I guess you could get away with it.
I do all the time, but I guess there is a technicality about that where the people don't like it because it's runny. It gets juicy and runny on the dough.
Oh, I can see. Well, our pizzas were all kind of deep dish jobs. You could put just about anything in there, and it would hold. Yeah.
Was there drugs in the pizza?
No, but you could find pot in there. No problem. In fact, there were probably some people growing pot in there for a time. Not easy to do, by the way. There are easier places to grow pot than in Kalalau Valley, but the people that lived there did it, and they worked hard to do it.
I would have thought it would be easy to grow there.
Technically, yeah. I mean, it's a great growing area, but you got helicopters coming in all the time. Tourist helicopters, DEA helicopters, state helicopters. It's a noisy place in the daytime with the helicopter scene.
So would you ever go back there? Like, what have you been doing after lately? Because this, the book does talk about a past, right? A few years back.
Well, so the end of the book, the last section of the book, I talk about I spent a month in Kalalau Valley in 2007, and
like 15, 16 years ago. Yeah, 15 years
yeah,
ago.
And so that was the last full long stay. But when I left the valley at that time, I thought I would be back in about a month or two. I was going to Germany on a consulting gig. And then when I left Germany, I thought, well, it's winter in Hawaii. Why don't I go to Thailand and check that out? So I went to Thailand, and then one thing led to another, and I ended up staying there for like a year and a half in Thailand and Laos, Cambodia, traveling around. And then I went back to the U.S. for a few months. And then my attention was, okay, now I'm going to go back to Kalalau. When I got to Kalalau again, it was winter time. I couldn't get back in, and I thought, well, hell, I'm just going to go back to Southeast Asia for the winter, and then I'll come back in the spring. And then when I got to Southeast Asia, one thing led to another. Met some Chinese girl in Burma. The next thing you know, I'm living in Beijing. And then I spent like another 6 years in Asia after that. Never got back to Kalalau. My wife and I did come back to the States in 2012. And on our way back, we stopped in Hawaii, and I went to Kalalau Beach. And I spent 3 days there in 2012 for my 60th birthday. And then that was my last time in Kalalau.
So now you're 71?
Yeah, 71 coming up in March.
March what?
23rd.
Oh, just into the one after Pisces? No, Pisces. I don't know when
yeah, I'm right. I'm on the Aries side of that. There are a lot of Pisces people in Kalalau, but I was one of the Aries March people.
I'm a Pisces people.
Oh yeah. Well, in Vedic astrology, I'm a Pisces, but in Western astrology, I'm a Aries.
I think I only know Western.
Yeah, the Western thing is the more common one, but the Vedic one, the Western one is based on the sky stays still 2,000 years ago, and the Vedic, the Indian philosophy, astrology is the sky keeps moving, and so now technically I would be born in Pisces on that calendar and their astrology system.
So where are you now?
Right now, my wife and I are living in Georgia. We've been here for the last 7 years doing homesteading kind of stuff, but we're wrapping that up now. We've been growing our own food, and I've been raising pigs in a forest. And now at 71, that's a little bit much. I think I'm going to back off that and move back to Hawaii and continue to write books instead.
Really? You're going to go back to Hawaii?
Yeah. That's our plan.
Great. Whereabouts are you going to go?
That's a good question. I don't know. We're planning to land on Kauai. The last time we did this, we went to Kauai and we said, okay, let's make our home Kauai. And then we ended up living on the Big Island. So you never know how it's going to work out when you get there, but something will happen. But right, that's where we're probably going to make our first stop is Kauai. So
what was Beijing like then compared to, Western countries, that kind of thing? Did you notice? It
tripped me out. I had been only traveling through Southeast Asia, which is, very third world. So I was expecting China to be somewhat similar. And what I found was an extremely over the top modern country. I'd never been to any country in Asia that was so modern as China. It was just mind blowing. And I didn't even know how to describe it well, but I was totally shocked. It's like, whoa, this is not Cambodia. This is definitely, New York City or Vegas, really. It reminded me of Vegas. Downtown got a lot of neon lights at nighttime. It always reminded me of Vegas. Yeah, it's very built up.
So did you just as far as a freedom aspect goes, you were probably there, 10 years ago, something like that?
I was there during when Hu Jintao was the leader of the Chinese party, and things were pretty mellow. In fact, honestly, when I was there, you couldn't distinguish the U.S. and China very much different.
That's kind of what
realistically.
Yeah.
Sorry, what year was that?
That was 2009 to 2013.
See, I think that's when like Brody was there too, and it was just like having a time.
Yeah, it's great. It was fantastic. Compared to what it is today, I wouldn't want to go back to that China. I would readily go back to the China not readily, but I wouldn't be uncomfortable living in the China that I lived in between 2009 and 2013.
Yeah.
I had a lot of freedom. I didn't feel oppressed. I didn't have any problems there. The people I knew didn't have any problems. So, I knew a lot of Chinese people.
What do you feel like in Georgia compared to all the places
I would prefer Beijing is preferable to Georgia, but in every way. I mean, really, honestly, the modern America reminds me of what people think of China as. It's a lot of oppression, a lot of civil rights violations for minor things. The government's out of control in terms
Really?
of the way. Yeah, even in Georgia. Although the COVID thing here was pretty mellow, you know what I mean, compared to everywhere else. There, it was like the masks were optional, except for the big box stores who mandated it. But the government of Georgia, didn't have any mask rule or anything like that. So, it was a pretty mellow scene during that. But on the whole, I had problems with them in ways that I don't want to describe right now. But it reminded me of China in a lot of ways. So I'm not thrilled with the government here.
What about Southeast Asia?
Southeast Asia, I don't know how to explain this, but I think if you're an American, you get away with a lot more stuff, or even a foreigner. You have a lot more freedom in their country than the people living there do, if you know how to play the game right.
From the state or just socially.
Both, like if you find yourself in some trouble with the cops in one of these countries, usually when I was there, I don't know what the price is now, but $100 would probably get you out of the deal. No problem. Like, I have a friend living in Bangkok, and he was driving a scooter one day and he got pulled over. Right. So the guy says, "You have a license?" No, he doesn't have a license. The guy says, "Well, I need 1,000 baht. I need 500 baht. That's your fine." Because they charge you, right? You're guilty. Pay the fine. Right. So he gives him 1,000 baht, and he said, the cop says, "I don't have change." He whips the 1,000 out of the cop's hand and says, "Get it changed, and then come back." So it's you can buy your way out of stuff, and it's a much more I don't know. It's an easier system to deal with in here, where it's all a big game that you got to play with lawyers and stuff.
Yeah, I think I paid $100 in Mexico. I paid $100 in 1988.
Yeah, there you go.
To get away from the cops. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Everyone has access to the corruption.
Yeah.
It's not
right, exactly.
It's not a limited hangout corruption. Everyone, you just how much you got in your pocket. Maybe you don't need a ticket today.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, it's well known that you can buy your way out of that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I like that system, but it's wild. I lived in Phnom Penh for a month once, and that was a trip. Like, it's really, it was a scene, but you could walk down the street. That's the capital of Cambodia. That's the capital of Cambodia.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah. And it's a wild city. It's an old French colonial town, and it's it's wild. I'm sure it's tamed since I've been there. Everything changes over time.
Yeah. So I don't want to forget to ask you, but and Darren, if you have any questions, you can jump in too. But I want to talk about the style of your audiobook before we leave you too.
Yeah, sure.
Darren,
do you have any comments or?
Well, I'm just curious, because you're 71, you lived all over the world. What's your thought on the general trend, I guess, for civilization? In the West specifically.
Yeah, my philosophy. I've had gone through a lot of back and forth on this, so I'll tell you what I think. I think that the biggest thing I focus on now is not the state of civilization, but the state of myself and how I deal with it and how I live my way through it. I don't think that I can help civilization. I don't think civilization can be helped, but I do think that each individual, if they focus on what's important to them, they will be able to find a way to, change their civilization.
That's interesting. I'm kind of sort of coming to that too after reading some books from the 1940s and stuff and thinking like this has been just a struggle like for so long.
Right.
And it's just like nothing has changed in another 100 years, it's like, it's just, yeah. It feels it feels like a,
at this point, I'd be happy if nothing changed in the next 100 years.
Well, there's always change. I mean, that's the thing you have to deal with is there's always going to be change. That's the Buddhist thing, Nietzsche, it's all changing. So,
I kind of mean the internal struggle between these elites who think they know what's better for everybody than we do. Then that's basically the struggle that's always been around, I feel like.
Right. But see, we as individuals have the option of standing up against that. And that's what most people don't do. I got drafted during the Vietnam War. So I didn't go to Canada or Sweden. I just exercised my right. I filed a petition for being a conscientious objector. I was expecting to be hassled and fought. But you know what happened? They sent me a CO card in the mail. You're a conscientious objector. And that's all I had to do to get it and nothing more. And then, so every time I find myself in one of these, okay, so I'm going to blab the story I didn't want to tell you. I was growing some special herbs in my garden here in Georgia when one day a helicopter with gunmen in it shows up on my property. And then about a half an hour later, a cop with a gun shows up and they're telling me that this is illegal. They don't have a warrant. They have no right to be on my property. The Supreme Court has already ruled that you can't use helicopter surveillance. And it's a federal crime to violate somebody's civil rights and expose them on their private property. And yet they came into my property and stole my property. Then they put me in jail for a night. Then a year later, they arraigned me and charged me. And then nothing. Now, I don't know why nothing. Nobody can tell me anything. And so maybe they're trying to torture me. I don't know. But for me, it doesn't matter because I'm right and they're not.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So, and by the way, I grew pot in my front yard in China 2 years in a row. And so, am I more free in the United States of America? No.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It really is. It just shows you what a waste of resources, too.
Yeah. Who knows how much money they spent to do that and how much money they would have to spend if they actually tried to bring this to trial, because this is obviously a Supreme Court case. And, and I'm sure that I could find a few supporters out there who might agree with me. So I don't think that but the fact that they did it is what's really upsetting. And you know what? One of the cops told me, he said, we got another guy your age last year who did this. And when I killed his plants, he cried. And I said, well, you know what I did? I cut my plants down and fed them to my pigs. Not your pigs.
And you're next, piggy.
Yeah. Well, when they arrested me one night, one of my pigs, my boar ran out to see what was going on. And one of the cops said, hey, when did you get pigs? And I said, which time?
That's right.
So do you see Western Civ? I think what Darren was thinking might be an answer. Do you see Western Civ declining then, like expertise, manpower, I mean, the economy, everything, or does it just, are we just shambling along here like we have been?
I see them making a power grab, and it's up to us to resist it, but not on a collective scale, but on an individual scale. I don't think we can join together and beat them because, they're only going to infiltrate your group anyway. But you can beat them on an individual basis if you know what your rights are and you're willing to fight for them. And even if it's not a legal right that you supposedly have, if it's a human right that you should have, then you should stand up for it, because you have to fight for your right to party.
Yeah.
Resist we much.
So,
Right.
okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, even the resistance part isn't really it, because I didn't resist anything. I was just minding my own business, growing my tomatoes and other herbs in my garden. And all of a sudden a helicopter shows up and decides that I'm doing something that the state says I shouldn't do. They have no right to do that. They have no right to tell me that. They have no right to be on my property. They needed special documents to do that they didn't have.
I mean, I guess that could be looked at as a form of resistance. I mean, you're resisting the system, that's for sure.
Well, I'm certainly not, I'm not cooperating. That's for sure. I'm definitely not compliant, and I've never been. So that's part of my problem or my saving grace. I'm not sure which.
I'll go with the latter.
So yeah, you put some interesting, your audiobook was interesting. You put different music in there and some different recordings you had from the valley.
Right.
So maybe you could just, before we let you go, you can mention how you put that together. And is it going to go on Audible at all? Like, are you going to, I noticed you did it on your own website, your own.
I thought about that, but I haven't really done that. And, but I might, at this point, I've just tried to sell it on my own. So,
yeah.
Well, it hasn't got enough legs yet to make it even worth putting it on Audible, I don't think. But I tried to make it unique. And how it happened was that there's a guy named Larry. He appears in several stories in the book. And Larry, in 2009, started bringing in cameras. One of the Outlaws' brothers was the guy who founded GoPro. And so he was getting a bunch of GoPro stuff, and he was coming in and filming stuff, and of course we'd get audio, and then he had upgraded his equipment over time. So I have a couple of years worth of his archive. And are you still there? Because you disappeared.
I'm still here.
Yeah,
there
still
he is.
here, yeah.
There you go. So anyway, Larry had an archive of video and audio, and so I was able to utilize a lot of that in the audio book. And then Larry and a few of the other Outlaws, I recorded them talking about their stories, and so occasionally I'd be able to put them into the audio book, telling their parts of the stories. And so I felt, and one of the Outlaws told me that for her, she felt like she was right back in the valley. She felt like I was right there. I knew everybody's voice. I could hear what was going on. I'd been part of that scene. It was really great. And so, not everybody can say that, but I think that people experiencing that audiobook can have something of the Kalalau experience. They can hear the sounds. They can hear people talking. That sort of thing can be going on.
Yeah. It was really well done. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Very, very creative. It must have taken a long time to put that together.
I've been doing this sort of thing for a long time. So the hardest part was just convincing myself that I had a decent recording. Like I re-recorded everything a couple of times. I won't do that for the next time, but this time was my first real audiobook thing. So I put more time into it than I thought. But adding the extra music and all that was pretty easy. But getting my own recordings right was what I was troubled with.
Right. Yeah. No, that was well done.
Thanks. I tried to make that opening as killer as possible. It was, I tried to make it a really whiz bang.
Where can our listeners get the book?
If you go to buzzcoastin.com, the links to everything there. There's the audiobook is for sale at that site. The print book link to Amazon is there, and there's a bunch of free stuff, free samples and stuff like that.
And you got another one coming out at some point?
Yeah, I'm writing the next book right now. I'm going through my second rough draft, and it's more details about the Vision Quest, what happened to me during the Vision Quest. So I've got now like maybe 30,000 words about that. And then I've got another section that leads up to that, all that stuff. So, and that's the next book. And then maybe the third book will be the story of my Asian travels, because I got a lot of good stories from that too.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, really, I'm honored to be here, and I'm sorry I didn't do the video thing. You could see me in my ratty T-shirt talking.
No, it's all good.
All right.
So good. Thanks, buddy. Yeah. Good luck in your move to Hawaii.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate it.
Let us know when you get there, because we might do an event out there at some point and we can meet up or something.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'll let you know once I get settled in, and then you all are welcome to come on over and check it out.
Right on. Thanks, buddy.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot. Aloha. Hui ho. See you later.
Thanks,
Hui
Scare.
ho.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That was a chat with Buzz Coastin. What'd you think?
Yeah, that was fun.
Is it Buzz Coastin?
Yeah, Buzz Coastin. Yep.
A great radio name.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was your fake podcast name going to be? Possibilionist? Buzz Coastin is way better.
It was Possibilionist Genome.
That's terrible. In retrospect.
It's not terrible.
It's pretty terrible. I wonder what mine would be. Luke Powers. Luke Power. Max Power.
I like the Max Power, but it needs more of an indigenous twang to it.
That's right. Like
two trees kind of thing, or like
Chief.
Two chiefs power or something like that, or two power chiefs.
Wow. It's pretty racist. Big thanks to Buzz for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks if you're one of the few who choose to support our work over here. If you are getting some value from our little show, that little Possibilionist Genome works so hard on, and me, and we get it out to you every week for 500 and some weeks in a row. Head over to gramerica.ca/support and sign up for a monthly today. Make a one-time donation. You know, whether it's $1 a month or $50 a month or anything in between, it helps, and we really can't do it without you. Won't do it without you. So if you are loving the show, it's never been more important. Head over to gramerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly today. Head over to gramerica.ca. Check out our other podcasts. And check out our audiobooks at Adultbrain.ca, our tours at contact@thecabin.com. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
I sat on the wall. I could see it all. Trickery was afoot, and evil was at its root. The people were scatterplots, not many could connect the dots. Some people stood tall, in spite of their righteous voices made small. Put down your phone, your soul's turned to stone. The rhythm of the algorithm has driven a schism, created this prison. I'm shocked and appalled at the technocracy's gone, pulling strings of marionettes, setting traps in cybernets. Infinite scroll as addictive as cigarettes. Cat videos for freedom of the press. People that stand tall, in spite of our righteous voices made small. Put down your phone, your soul's turned to stone. The rhythm of the algorithm has driven a schism, created this prison. Double click uninstall. Rome's about to fall. This hard drive is corrupted, and our minds have been abducted by a silicon dream so seductive. When yelling at bots becomes unproductive, people, we need to stand tall, in spite of our righteous voices made small. Put down your phone, your soul's turned to stone. The rhythm of the algorithm has driven a schism, created this prison.